everyone, and welcome to Books in the World. I'm so delighted to be here with a friend of mine, author, illustrator, Leo Landry. Hello, Leo. How are you?
Good, Madeline.
Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
We were talking. Leo and I know each other for quite a few years. I was the library director in Easton. Leo lives in Easton. Leo is an author, illustrator, and a bookseller, and has some lovely books that we're going to talk about today. But he has written about 18 books.
About that, 17 or so, 17 or 18, yeah.
And 7 or so of them are illustrated books for other writers. The rest are all of yours.
Yep.
Leo, you're also a bookstore manager at Unlikely Story.
Yes, an Unlikely Story in Plainville, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
The bookstore manager and the children's book buyer at the bookstore.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk more about that. I think people who know children's books are going to be quite interested in that. But before I don't give anybody the impression that this is only a children's bookstore, because
right, it's a general bookstore.
It's a general bookstore and a cafe.
Yes,
and quite good food.
Really great
and
cafe. Yep.
Quite a selection of books and gifts.
Yep,
Lovely
books, gifts.
Right.
Cafe.
Really good. So you came to being an author after working at the children's bookstore in Brookline. Is that
yes,
correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. I worked there ultimately for 20 years in Brookline, and during that time I always wanted to write and illustrate. I had gone to art school at Rhode Island School of Design for architecture, but was really more interested in children's books. So over the years at the children's bookshop, I really got a great education about children's literature and publishing, and you meet, in those days you met a lot more. There was a lot more publishing in Boston at that time, so I met lots of really great editors and people in art departments, and learned a lot about children's books that way.
So at some point you decided to stop and start writing and illustrating.
Yeah, I was able to, when I left the children's bookshop, I had a good opportunity to illustrate 3 books of manners for toddlers that were written by the Peggy Post, or the Emily Post people. Peggy Post was the author. So it was a really great opportunity to try to make a go at it. By that point, I had probably done about 6 or 7 books at that time. By that time, and this gave me the chance to try to make a go at it full time.
One of the titles that you wrote that I always loved, that "Eat Your Peas, Ivy Louise."
Oh yes.
Oh
right.
My goodness. Well, one thing we're going to talk about is your wit, which I found all sprinkled through all your different books, and that title sort of illustrates it. So your newest book, which we have here, is called Home Run, Touchdown, Basket, Goal, Sports Poems for Young Children. For sports poems for little athletes.
Yes.
There we go. Let's get this right. So we're going to look at a Leo Landry book, at 3 of your books, because you have great heart, great humor, and great illustrations. And I know you're a pretty humble guy, so I know you're probably embarrassing you. But, I'm going to give you a chance to describe how this book is organized, and then and then just read us 1 or 2 of the stories that you have in here.
So this book came about when I was just doing a lot of doodling, and came up with a lot of illustrations of children in different sporting type uniforms and things. Which is what this is here.
That's actually what this is.
Yeah.
I'm going to put this here, and maybe the camera can get it, and you can continue talking.
Yeah, and then so I was just kind of doodling these things and drawing little kids in sports get-ups, and at the same time I realized that on the shelves of the bookstores that I have worked at, there really has never been anything, not a lot of things about sports for really young kids.
Okay.
And I just kind of at the same time both of these things came into my mind, like, oh, maybe I could do something like that. So I just sat down with these doodles, and at first the original idea was that I wanted them to be board books for very small children, where it would be one poem and one sport per book, and then perhaps you could start with 4 of them, and if that was successful, you could do 4 more. But as I submitted it around to different editors, they thought it was cute enough, but not enough to publish these as board books. But finally, one of the editors I sent it to said, hey, what would you think of this not as board books, but as a regular picture book format, which is 32 pages, where it's just kind of the year in sports, one after the other. And I thought that was a great idea.
Okay.
So she said, see what you can come up with. And so then that started that process, and ultimately became this book.
So each of the sports has a 2-page spread
Yeah,
and
every
a poem.
every sport, there's a small poem, and this happens to be lacrosse,
The judo
karate,
one, very
judo,
cute.
right?
Yeah.
Bicycling. So I wanted it to be simple enough for toddlers, so the rhymes are just very straightforward and short, and I wanted it to be colorful and give you a beginner's sense of that particular sport, like ice skating.
So give us a sense of the soccer one,
Oh,
soccer
sure.
match.
So the poem about soccer is called Soccer Match, and it goes like this. I've got my ball, I'm set to play, I'm ready for the match today. I kick the ball, you use your head, the ball comes back to me instead. I dribble down the field and then I pass the ball to you again. You kick once more, I see a hole, the ball sneaks by, we cry out, goal! So I tried to, many of the poems end in the score of that sport. They don't
Okay.
all, but so the soccer one ends in goal. Football one ends in touchdown, baseball ends in home run. So that was a
Okay.
challenge to come up with a rhyme for each one of those scores. But I think it worked ultimately.
Yeah, I think it was fun. Go ahead
Yeah.
and read the play ball one.
Okay, so play ball is about baseball. I've got my ball, I've got my glove, I'm ready for the game I love. I've got my cleats, I've got my bat, and don't forget my baseball hat. I throw a pitch, you take a swing, the ball sails over everything. You run the bases one by one, we gather round and shout, home run!
Yay.
So,
Have you road tested this with any kids?
no, I have not.
Okay,
Yeah.
well you're this book is coming out in March 26th.
Yeah, the end of March,
and,
March 26th.
You'll have an opportunity to give your own program
I know,
at
right,
your own
right,
bookstore.
perhaps, yes,
you know.
right.
So you had a good opportunity. So a couple of your other books we have here, What's Up, Chuck, and Grin and Bear It. These are they're not picture books.
No,
they're not for
right,
babies.
they're considered either early chapter books or first chapter books. They're both 64 pages, the kind of similar to the concept of the I Can Read books that you're familiar with
Yeah.
from years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
But they're always in this format. I think it's 6x9 or 7x9, something like that. And both books are set in the same community of woodland forest.
Yes.
Grin and Bear It came first. That's about a bear who wants to make his friends laugh, but he has stage fright. So he tries to do stand-up performance and, has a little issue there.
Has a meltdown.
Has a meltdown
Has a
and
meltdown.
runs away, right?
Runs away. All these things that happen to kids. They get
Yeah, right,
embarrassed. They want to give up.
Right. And this was an interesting one in that at the end of that story, he does not get over his stage fright. So when I was submitting that to different editors, they declined it because he doesn't solve his issue. in the way you typically would in a children's book.
Okay.
But he ends up being able to make his friends laugh in this book by becoming a writer for somebody else who does the stand-up. And so when the editor who did accept this at Charlesbridge Publishing loved it for that reason. So it was very interesting that for the reason that the other editors didn't think it worked is the reason that she did think it worked.
Well,
so it was very
know.
interesting.
Yeah,
so
you never know.
it was just have to kind of have faith in the project and be persistent, I guess.
So this, you have, rhyming and being funny is something that comes through all your books.
Okay.
And as a bookstore buyer, you probably know, is this pretty prevalent for children's books to have a lot of rhyming, a lot of humor?
Yeah, for young children, I think. Yeah, there's a lot of books in verse, but at being the children's book buyer, I see so much of it, but not all of it is really excellent. So it's tough to kind of go through dozens and dozens of picture books and books in verse and kind of try to select out the ones you think are the best.
Well, interesting that you say that. I find when I read to my grandchildren, some of the books are really cringeworthy. I'm
Okay.
like, you just don't know. Why did the author think this was going to work?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't feel right. There are things that just don't feel right. You probably know what I'm talking about.
You read enough of them and you notice that, right?
So I assume you write your own jokes, including what's a bear's favorite baseball team?
Oh, the Cubs.
The Cubs.
Yes. Those actually, the jokes in Grin and Bear It, I didn't necessarily write them as originals. I combed through all the dozens and dozens of jokes and riddle books from when I was a kid that I loved. I was able to find a lot of the ones that I had as a kid. And those are a combo of finding those jokes and kind of maybe rewording them a little bit, or they're just kind of age-old classics.
Yeah.
Like, what's a bear's favorite vegetable?
Squash.
Yes.
Squash.
Or,
no, what happens,
when the bear
stomps through your garden?
Right.
I've read
Squash.
your books more
There you
recently
go.
than you have, probably.
Right. That's right.
That was squash.
Squash.
That was a good one. And what do bears use for their hairdos? Barrettes.
Barrettes. Yes.
Yeah. So these little creatures are drawn to go with the story, and you have had some you've answered some questions in the past about the difference between illustrating for babies' books versus this level.
Picture books versus these. First chapter books are different for the illustrations because you really have to pay attention to the text. Because when children are learning to read, they really focus on the pictures and get a lot of cues for the words that they're sounding out in the text. So in a picture book, you can put all sorts of other things in the background going on that add to the story, add to the text, and they complement each other. But in this type of book, at least from my point of view, I like to keep it really what's happening in the text is in the pictures so that kids can pull themselves along.
Squash.
Right. There's the squash picture.
Interesting. When I do read to children, I notice there's a lot going on in certain books, like the big 2-page spread in a picture book.
Yeah.
And the kids really are looking at the pictures.
Yeah,
they
definitely.
probably are not even listening to the text at certain ages. I mean, we have a book at my house, The Cods of Cape Cod.
Okay.
Oh my God. I could practically recite The Cods of Cape Cod.
I don't know that one.
I'll give you a tip.
That's funny.
But there's a lot going on every page,
Okay.
and it is quite interesting how the children look at the pictures.
Yeah, and my art is very spare, I think, to a lot of other books I see. I feel like a lot of books are very cluttery, and I just like to really tone it down and have a spare kind of...
It's beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
So the second book in this, like, what did you call them? Independent readers?
Yeah, first chapter books, yep.
What's Up, Chuck?
What's Up, Chuck, yes.
And this you had a lovely review by Kirkus. This came out in 2016, and the Kirkus Books Reviewing Service said it's a kind-hearted beginning chapter book, but second graders may wish it had some vomit jokes.
Yes, no vomit jokes in this book, right.
It has delightful rhyming jokes and the humor. And it's also nice that these characters are the same people who are in people
yes.
animals,
right.
who were in the other books.
Yeah, it's not really a sequel to Grin and Bear It, but it's set in the same community. So this character, a woodchuck named Chuck, is a very minor character in Grin and Bear It, and he got his own story here in What's Up, Chuck, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, and this story in particular deals with a little bit about jealousy and self-confidence and kind of finding out why you do what you do and loving what you do.
Liking what you do.
Yeah,
it's about
liking what you do.
A wood carver.
Yes.
whose name is Chuck Wood.
Yes, Chuck Wood.
Who is a woodchuck.
Right.
Excuse me. I find it I love it. I should have.
Oh, thanks.
It's like being a child all over again. And the art show is judged by a moose whose name is Bull.
Yep, that's right.
I love it. So, are you going to do more books in this type?
I'd like to. I have written a third one that is still, I'm not finished working on it, but it's, again, like Chuck was a minor character in Grin and Bear It, there's another minor character that's a squirrel named Shirley, and this story that I'm writing is about her, and it's called Shirley, You Must Be Joking. So, so I hope that is able to come along next.
I love it. I love it. So let's talk about writing and publishing and surviving as an author for a minute. When we had a chance to meet, you told me an anecdote about a children's author.
Oh, sure.
Who told you what his philosophy was. Yeah,
there's a really great local author, Jack Gantos, who lives in the Boston area, and he's won the Newbery Medal, and he started out with the Rotten Ralph picture books many years, like in the 70s, and then began writing novels, and he's just a really great person. He teaches at Emerson College. I think he still does.
I think so.
And I ran into him at a conference a couple years ago at a time when I was just really wishing this could have worked out, that I could do this as my career and not need the day job. So I was feeling a little down about that, and he was kind of, I think, picked up on that and really gave me some good perspective in that most people, most writers, it's a fairly recent thing that authors make a living at their writing.
Some authors, a
few
authors.
A few, right. And it's fairly recent. You know, there's all, like, of course, J.K. Rowling, Stephen King, you know, all of that. But he was just really great, and said even with him, he has used teaching as a way to, if you're building a table, teaching was 3 legs of his table that he's building, and writing is the 4th leg. And so he said, for you've always worked in bookstores and been a bookseller. For you, that's the base of your table that you're building, and writing and illustrating is the 4th. So that, seeing it in that perspective made me feel like, okay, I can keep at this and see what happens.
It kind of elevated your book selling.
Yeah, it did. Right, I know.
Of the table, I guess.
Instead of
thinking, oh well, it's just my day job.
Yeah, but it made you really think about the value of that and how that informs what you're doing as well.
Well, speaking of book selling, let's talk a little bit more about independent bookstores, and specifically the Unlikely Story.
Yes, an
Tell
Unlikely
us
Story.
the Unlikely Story.
Okay, so I had worked at the children's bookshop in Brookline for about 20 years and left to try to make a go at this. But after a few years, it just wasn't viable. I had a daughter in high school, going to college soon, so I had to figure out a way to contribute more to paying the bills. So at that time, the only job I could find around was in the college bookstore world. So I worked in a few different college bookstores, which was pretty miserable. Everyone, when you're the textbook person, nobody likes you because the books are over $200, and they think that you are charging that. You know, you're making that up. But at any rate, when I was doing that, and pretty miserable doing it, an Unlikely Story had just opened up. And I had gone over there to check it out and see how beautiful the building was and all that. But at that time, they were not needing a full-time bookseller. They had already hired who they needed when they opened. So I was disappointed that I missed that opportunity. But a few months later, I came back, and with just to kind of remind them that I was still around in case they might need someone. But when I walked in the door, a few of the people who worked there who I was acquainted with said, "Oh my gosh, we just said to each other, let's call Leo." And then I walked right in. So from that point on, it just was a perfect match. And I gave my notice at the college bookstore the next day. And
if any of our viewers have even heard about An Unlikely Story or thought about going there, I want to urge them to go. It's in Plainville. It's a beautiful spot that was, I thought it was a renovated old mill building, and I think that was the intent originally.
Yeah, the intent was to take this old general store and
a general store,
and convert it
and
to a bookstore.
And it was bought by Jeff Kinney, who is the author of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books.
Yeah.
How many of them, I don't know, 20 or 30 of them?
No, not that many.
No. There are just a lot of them in the store.
Right. Yeah, he had purchased the building, from what I understand, to convert it into a bookstore, but it was found that the building was beyond repair.
Yeah.
So they had to tear it down, and he built a brand new building in the same spot, which is quite a beautiful
It's a beautiful building.
It's all reclaimed wood and LEED certified, and it's quite the place.
And it's reminiscent of the market that was there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it kind of has a tribute to it a little bit. Yeah.
And it's a full-service bookstore. We discussed this before, but not only that, but the events, the programming is quite interesting.
Yeah, we're definitely, Plainville is not where there's a lot of street traffic going by. So we have found that to get people to the store, you need events. So we just all the time have events. Every week there's at least 2 or 3 things going on. Different authors, different programs of all kinds.
Programs including yoga classes,
ukulele classes. Yeah, there's a lot of children's story times, things like that. So, and it's a great community space as well. So.
People can actually use it. There are lovely leather sofas.
Yeah.
You can just go in there and use their internet and
spend the day.
And
that's right.
Drink coffee and have a sandwich. And it's quite the place. I wanted, as I said to you, people on the Cape who are interested in bookstores. It's only 50 miles away from where I live, with Marston's Mills. Didn't take me long to get there. If you were having an author that I was interested in, I would go. I really would.
Yeah, it's not that far.
It's not too bad, especially maybe not in the summer.
Right, right, without the snow.
Yeah. So you have a newsletter.
Yep, we have an online newsletter.
Yeah.
That is every 2 weeks, and then we have special event, separate ones that go out, because it's just constant.
So it's called An Unlikely Story.
Yeah, in Plainville.
Right. Tell me a little bit about what you learned from all the book buying you do. I mean, what are some of the trends you're seeing?
One thing that is hard as an author and an illustrator working in a bookstore is that every day there are so many books that come out. There's so many books published. So that can sometimes be inspiring when you see a lot of books that you love and you love the art and things like that. But it can also be discouraging because there's your little book trying to make its way into the world amongst all of these things.
Yeah.
So we try to, when we meet with sales reps and see the new books being offered each season, we really try as best we can to pick out the best ones so that we're just putting out there good quality stuff. We try to stay away from a lot of the things that are the TV shows and things like that as much as you can. But as a bookseller, sometimes you need to serve the community you're in. So if you if something has become a big hit in the media, you need to have it because you want to have it there for the customers you serve. So it's a big kind of a balancing act.
Do you do a lot of hand selling? I mean,
definitely.
On your side of the store, you must have had, I don't know, 5,000 titles. Is that a reasonable guess?
I was asking that. I was trying to figure that out recently, and I don't think I have quite figured it out yet. I don't know if it's that many. But perhaps there is, yeah.
I have a librarian's
you
eye
might
for
have
these
a good
things.
eye for a sense of
We used to
estimating
measure
that.
books by the foot. We
Yeah,
had
right.
and children's books were, we
a
knew
certain
how
number
many
per foot.
So I'm sure that you have to walk up to people and say, you'd like this.
Yeah. Well, the great thing about independent bookstores is that people will come in looking for the personal advice and recommendations.
Yeah.
So everyone who works there are huge readers and always able to do that.
Well, I'm going to have to interrupt our conversation
Yes.
and say that it's been delightful having you, and urge everyone to think about going to the Unlikely Story, but if not, Leo's books are widely available in libraries, online. You have a lovely website, and something for every age, just about. This is nice.
Yeah, and
book.
this new one comes out in
March.
a couple weeks.
Yeah, and we'll make sure we see it in our bookstores here.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Leo. I really have enjoyed seeing you again
Thanks,
after all
Madeline.
these years.
Yeah, good to see you. Thank you.